entirely present in this evening. We give thanks for all the spirit workers of love and light that are here today. And we ask that they inspire the speaker of this evening. May he be the vessel of tonight's message, but also may each one of us connect on these higher ideals and ideas. May we be open-minded and ready to learn new things. And we pray also for those who have come here today in either realms of life, seeking assistance. May your kind and loving ways, dear Creator, touch the hearts and souls of each one of us present and connected, and so be it. Well, we're excited, Leo. Are you excited? You're going to be doing chapters 7 and 8. Yeah, we're excited, yes. And I don't want to take up too much of your time, so please, this is a session 4. We're excited to learn what's in these chapters.
Hello, everyone. No, we can do better than that. Hello, everyone. Okay, much better. It's like, who am I talking to? No, and it's, as I'm just pulling something up here, it's always, as we have been saying, right? It's an amazing restart. Again, Kirsten led the session last week where I was thinking about this as we're preparing for chapter 7, session 4, chapter 7 and 8, to bring this at the SSB. It's, it's always good to be back and to present this to us here. And as we have been learning with Mr. Miranda, Divaldo, and all the other spirits that are coordinating this effort of regeneration on planet Earth, not only the minds of the spirits in Brazil, as we will see here, some of them today, but throughout the world as well, right? And when we talk about regeneration, even though it's a Brazilian book, it's from Brazilian authors, we're speaking for the whole world, right? Because it's always important for us to remind the American public as well, us here, although many of us immigrants, that we also have our mentors of the United States. We also have those who are guiding us throughout this nation. So it's always good to talk about this. And I'll say one more personal note as well. It's not easy. It's definitely not easy. And for us as well that are coming to these meetings, I'm quite sure it's not easy because we could give a million, say a million things and excuses to say, you know what, I can see it from home. I can watch from home. But maybe I don't have to do it. But if we put the effort to it, hopefully it will be worthwhile and that we can learn something and we can apply as well in our lives, right? This chapter, these 2 chapters, I thought about taking a step back and only present one, but we're going to continue full force and try to cover both of them. And it's not easy. And I, as usual, like to always see what we have covered, right? We went through already the introduction through chapter 6. And as we have learned a lot from them. Just the title of the chapters is really involving and enticing, right? And these 2 are no different than that: momentous encounter and on the battlefield. We had similar ones from the other 2 books that involves, the coordination of efforts to alleviate pain. The feelings that are sometimes not even given the opportunity to be analyzed. One of the things that we we have been talking a lot here at the SSB with one another is the idea of not even know what we are feeling, right? And the consequences of those feelings. And we don't even stop to say, this is what I'm feeling, let alone to be validated. And I'm talking about not others validating our needs, our feelings, right? Our thoughts, but ourselves. We forget to do such a thing. So it's very interesting. And what I would like to say, there are two very deep chapters, and it's important for us to really pay attention. And I'll pose the question soon on our relationship with ourselves and our relationships with the spiritual world as well, right? And there are two. There are actually, let me see, three cases here. Hopefully, we'll get to the third one depending on time. They're very eye-opening, to say the least, and they're pretty harsh, right? And I think that, well, I'm certain that Manuel Philomeno de Miranda and the other mentors as well, working with him on the Beyond, did not allow the message to come through or to present these cases to scare us, right? It was to really to say, let's shift so that we can also help the shift into a world of regeneration. In any case, we would like to then start, before we go into chapter 7, to recollect a case that happened on chapter 6. Towards the end of the chapter 6, there is a case of a gentleman who is going through the transition because of COVID-19. Remember, just to kind of refresh ourselves here, Manuel Philomeno de Miranda and the other mentors, the other helpers, they were actually stationed at what we would call a Spiritist center, that in the spirit realm, have the help on the other side, as well as a school, as a hospital, and this location where they were connected from the spirit realm and connected with the physical realm also serves as a hospital, as a school as well. So it's important for us to see in that manner alone that there's help, there's guidance, right? But one thing begs us to question ourselves. How are we connected with this other side? How are we connected with ourselves? How is our spirituality? And I'll add one more thing. How are we connected with the fact that tomorrow, or perhaps today even, we are transitioning to the other side? No, and it's scary to, it may be a morbid idea. It may be, oh, we're thinking about death. Yes, we are. Losing the physical body. I could not be here tomorrow with you guys. Thank God I'm here now, but something could have happened that would have prevented me from being here now. Think about this. I mean, it's not for us to be scared, but to really take a step back in what are the priorities of life right now? How are we thinking? If I have a paper cut, not to go to the extreme, how am I dealing with that paper cut? Right? How am I dealing with the thoughts, the difficulties that are true difficulties, that aren't just a paper cut, right? How are we dealing with? How are we dealing with the pain of others, right? Because it can happen that we will get to the other side and we're still vibrating the same way. So if we can do anything throughout this hopefully an hour, a little over an hour, is for us to think about this as we're going through this. Because I think, or if I can say, I mean, anybody can get many things from these two chapters, but I think the main theme here for these two chapters for us to rethink on how we're dealing with spirituality, our spirituality, and not how that connects with us going back to the true reality of life. And that's very important. I hope it is important to you, as it became much important to me as we were studying these two chapters. Before we go to this case that I was saying before, that this gentleman is going through this difficult moment as he's transitioning, I would like to bring an example that Dione brought to me, and we can see also how things are connected, right? Dione brought a case to me that I felt very enticed to say, share it. Share it because it's important. And she did not, although we share a lot of things, right? I mean, she did not just come to me and share a case that has nothing to do with Spiritism whatsoever. And we start talking. I was like, even Kirsten got jealous and say, bring something to share with my talks too. But these are the things that we have to talk about it and show that not only Spiritism or spirituality in general, well, not only Spiritism, but spirituality in general is bringing to us the awakening, right? The change. So on that note, before we go on, because it can get a little bit It will get a little bit dark here before it gets brighter, but just to lighten up a little bit. Go ahead.
So hello again. A friend brought me this little magazine, and it's from I'm gonna say Sechonoe. You wanna go? Okay. Okay. So look at this. A friend of mine gave me this little magazine, like a newsletter from Sechonoe, because she likes yoga like me, and so we have something in common. When she comes from Brazil, she brings the little magazine. And this week, I got, she brought me in 2020, but I only read it this week because it was there, forgotten. And so there is the case of this guy. I'm going to call him Mr. B. Okay. And he grew up in this philosophy of life that is very positive, and they believe in gratitude. Above all, you have to be grateful for your good and your bad experiences. And you pray and you recognize yourself as a child of God. If this is happening to me, what is the lesson on this? And lots of points that coincide with what what happened to him was he was on his birthday. Everybody was calling him, and he started to feel uncomfortable. And he said, "Yeah, I'm gonna get a cold. Maybe I don't know. Maybe it's pneumonia." And then he got worse and worse. And in 2020, the approach to COVID was not like right now we have. So what happened is that he had to wait for the results of the test. And after 3 days, when he was already desperate and nervous and feeling the worst of the creatures, the people say, yeah, you do have it. And judging by what you're telling me, go to the hospital. He goes to the hospital, he's admitted, and then he just gets worse and worse and worse and afraid. And a movie of his life starts to go uh, on his mind. And why didn't I do better? Why didn't I, help that person? Why was I was not a good son, a better husband? Everything. Even if that was not the reality, he just felt regret, despair, nervousness, and he thought, "Oh my God, I'm gonna die." Well, so he ends up in how do you say, intensive care unit, the ICU, and he just see people dying, of course, because there were no resources. Like only medication for fever was allowed because they didn't really know how to deal with the thing. And so the atmosphere was not positive, and so he didn't have access to anything. Cold, hungry, because didn't know what to do with him, and there he was. So he would know that it was night when at 7 p.m. people came to the shift of 7 o'clock in the evening. In this particular night, after 3 days already, he notices that the nurse, the lady, was very irritated because she was basically alone. The people that came before her, they were so tired. They ran out of medicine, because we are talking here about Brazil and a crowd of people sick. So I don't know what city it was, but it doesn't matter. It was a hospital, and everything was missing. So what happened is that the lady, after taking care of many people that were really bad, she goes to him, and she noticed, oh my God, I have to change his diapers. And I don't know, because I'm not in the area, but she was so nervous and so irritated and so desperate. She has to tear his apron, whatever clothes the hospital gave to him. And she was probably smaller than him, because by the picture he looks like a man like Leo size. And so she started to shake him so that she could change him. And as she did that, it was like reality hit on him. And he said to himself, oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I here? What am I doing for me? How did I allow myself to get to this point? And then he said that at every moment, and she was cursing and complaining and saying, why didn't they do this? Why didn't he medicated this man? Why didn't they take better care of him? And he said that kind of a reality, get to him. Oh my God. And then the answers. So he said 3 days here, and it didn't help me to have the reality to myself, to place myself. And then he started from being desperate and nervous and angry to a situation that he said, yeah, it's like another movie coming into his mind. I complain about my job. I have a family. I complain about the family. I complain about everything, being that I have a job, a friend, many friends, a big family, and everybody loves me, and I have things, and I have a job that is most important. But what did I do? I pray, but not with the heart. I was thinking, but not with the heart. I was just doing, like a machine, like, yeah, but I didn't put any intention there. And all of a sudden, he realizes that, and he starts to change his attitude. So he started to ask the name of the people that were taking care of him. And he started to really pray and be thankful, and then thank the nurses and doctors and say, what's your name? And you, and how is your family? And he just thought, my God, how brave you guys are to be here taking care of us. And it was very interesting because as he became truly grateful and truly calm, and he realized himself as a child of God, and this is something that the Sechonoe philosophy prays. You are a child of God. So you're going through difficulties, but you are a child of God. So God is with you. But he said, I never did that. What did I do? I just complained, and I started to complain about other people's misery, and I should have be quiet, and shut up and just pray for everybody instead of being totally angry. And as he started to get better in his thoughts, he started to get better. So even the nurses, if they had to go and take blood from him, they would find the vein very quickly, and everything changed. And the doctor said, what are you doing? What's going on here? In 11 days, he could go back home. He was like 40% of the lungs were compromised, and there were people that came not so bad like him, or even worse, and some people die and said, but the doctor said, I don't know what you did, because you all of a sudden you started to change and get better and better. So I think we say this, I think Joanna's book, they are full of this kind of thing, and we sometimes, I think it is very difficult, because when something happens like COVID, one of us here that were not scared or angry, because he complained about everything he could. He confesses. And all I said here, it's not my words. It's his word, Mr. B. I'm going to call him, because he was in a bubble, I think, of not only a suffering, but of negativity. So he said that the vibration attracted all of that. And I think that, unfortunately, depending on the problems we get, it's what we all do, So that was a good reminder. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dione. This is a summary, would say, of these 2 chapters, how we can change. And Dione also mentioned how others did not change in their situation, right? Got worse. They went to the other side. And a point that I would like to make as well, that doesn't mean, folks, that some of our family members who passed, that they did not pray, that they did not connect with God. Only God knows the reason why they went, because we know of a lot of people who were very faithful that they also discarnate. So we're not saying here, we're not judging, saying that everybody who would discarnate was on the deplorable state. Okay, so it's important for us to analyze this as well. But going back to chapter 6, thank you, Dione, once more for the example. going back to the chapter 6, towards the end of chapter 6 on page 88, we'll see, and I'm saying the page because I know Paula is actually following us back there too. There is a passage that a case of a gentleman actually who is in a tough situation, just like this gentleman, that he was not connected at all, or not well connected to the moment of passing. And there were companions, spirit companions, some odious entities cursing and threatening him to take his body, right? And Manuel Philomeno says the following: the patient in the throes of death, terrified by conscious that the fatal moment was near, let desperation take over, which only increased his distress. Discarnation must be a moment of serenity, allowing the rupture of the bonds that link the spirit to dense matter to be gentle as they start to weaken by the lack of vital principle that maintains life in the body. So it's supposed to be a moment of going back. It's like we're going back to our homeland. We're going back home, right? But in reality, it's completely the opposite because of our materialistic ways, right? And Manuel Philomeno de Miranda starts this chapter by saying the absence of spiritual values, talking about this case, is very unfortunate for human beings. In the case at hand, the last link with the body had not yet been dissolved, since the connection to the crown chakra still remained. And the patient's discarnate enemies, yes, were already throwing themselves over the inanimate body, trying to pull out the terrifying spirit who screamed in a traumatic way. He had realized that the phenomenon of death had occurred, but did not know how to fend off the aggression of these three implacable entities fighting for his remains. Imagine how difficult this is. And I don't want to scare anybody off, but it's reality. One of them, the most ferocious, attacked him with punches and blasphemies, as well as terrifying accusations. He shouted that this was the moment of revenge, which should now continue indefinitely. Violent and venal, he represented the other two with monstrous aspect, laughing at him with their shocking appearance. As you can see, I kept this message here before we start reading this, because this too shall pass. This is the awakening that we're going through right now, to say, look, this is not science, fiction right now. This is a reality. We are awakening to these moments, to this reality, hopefully, that we are preparing ourselves. And we'll see here how we can do this. Manuel Philomeno de Miranda does alert us on how we can do this, as well as Bezerra de Menezes. He then continues, dying is a phenomenon of high magnitude, culminating with the issuing discarnation, at which time the spirit frees itself from the remains of the body it benefited from during its physical experience. Millions of cells die every minute and are replaced, while the final moment rises from a biological fate that takes the being to the spirit world, that is, back to its origin. And these, one thing that I would like to say, folks, is that these paragraphs, they're not in order. I'm just trying to extract a main idea from here. Thus, one must live in the body conscious of the transience of its organ, keeping our thoughts focused on lofty ideas to tune in with the higher spheres. Distance from the vulgarity and waste of lower passions stoked by malevolent minds of the spirit world. We have to shift. And how can we do this? Or is it this easy, I should ask? No, it's not. Because we already let's say our capabilities, because we have done so much now, is to only think of negative things. So it's a lot of work. It's an imposition in the physical body, in our minds, in our hearts, in the physical body as well, to always attract or think about the negativity, the negative things, right? Or the negative outcomes of our lives. Sometimes we, I have to look for a new job. Even the things in the physical realm that we have to deal with it, we already come with a negative outcome before it even happens. Oh, I have to do something at home. Am I capable of it? Well, find out. At least try, right? Before we, shoot ourselves in the foot. Try. And we're so negative, and this is what's happening to us. And as we do so, what do? We attract negative minds. If we were to do a survey here, ancestors? If you say no, please raise your hand. Do we think that we have negative connections from the past? Yes. We can only analyze our tendencies if we know that they were of a negative, right? Let's say foundation or element, whatever. And with that alone, we will see that we have some negative connections as well. So be it. Now, how do we change them is something really different, because we don't want to go through this, where when the moment of discarnation that we're supposed to meet our mentors, meet someone else, meet the group of people who we left behind, we're worried about those who are coming to take our physical bodies, the rest of our physical bodies, right? To free oneself from the influence of evil spirit is much more difficult than expect. It will depend on the mental constructions of the incarnate and the inner habits that will enable the connection between the two. For this reason, moral education plays a very important role in the human beings' lives, with the teachings of Jesus directed towards the real life, the immortal life, compared to the fleeting physical existence. Thus, knowledge of the principle of Spiritism assists and provides blessings of immeasurable meaning to physical existence, educating the beings and helping them grow towards the infinite without any shackles holding them back. Perhaps, yes, we will have the ideas of the past, meaning we have a responsibility with the past, but we don't get held back, because we know that now is the time to create a new future, right? So it changes us and puts us in a different perspective, that is not that, oh my gosh, I have done this, to others or to myself, I don't deserve this. Yes, we deserve more than we think, but it takes work. It takes a lot of work. And this is so freeing. Once more, I say this, with my heart open, because it's so freeing to us, to see this reality. And this is also the reason why this message becomes so hard to spread, because on the other side, there are other spirits that they do not want us to know this. So for the few of us, if we can at least talk to other people, not saying, okay, they're obsessors, they're going to come and get you. No, we're not going to say this. But to say, pray more, connect more, change, as Dione brought to us, change your perception. Yes, perhaps right now you're bedridden and that you can't do anything for yourself, but bless those who are connected with you, right? And that is so difficult. Then there is a meeting. That's why they say this encounter, right? There's a meeting that they go and Manuel Philomeno de Miranda, he mentions that they go to the south part of Brazil. And once more, the reason I was saying at the beginning that we also have our mentors here of a high order, that the mentor of Brazil comes and speaks with them. It's really interesting. And he also mentions that this meeting was happening around the world with the spiritual leaders of the other countries as well. So you can only imagine how beautiful this was, right? This moment. And it seems like it was being done collectively in that moment, or those moments, nearby. And he even mentions, because of the time, change, the time zones as well, they were done in different times of that day. So it's really interesting. But I found very interesting that he brings Ismael, who is, for some of you who already know, the mentor of Brazil, but he doesn't say what Ismael said, because he only says that of such a high order note that, the feeling was just incomprehensible. Like he was in an ecstasy of, it was just a different feeling altogether. The words of Ismael was really interesting. But anyways, at the appointment time, the immense circular auditorium was full. In the center of the field of a table had been placed for special invitees, along with a transparent podium and devices that resemble sound equipment to enable the voices of the speaker to be heard throughout the arena. After all attendees were settled in their seat, an adult choir standing behind the table sang Hallelujah by Handel and the Ave Rerum Corpus by Mozart. So you can see how high this is, just the music as well. And we bring this here because, again, it's one of the elements that, at least we always think, oh, should I bring this or should I not bring this? Because I think it's important, because it gives us besides what Mr. Miranda says, that it was several groups throughout Brazil who came to this meeting, so you can see the group work, right? But also the high note, the music, the environment, everything was so special. And then he says, the harmonious voice exalted the Lord, evoking the melody of the Middle Ages, brought to life by the distinguishing Austrian composer. After opening the meeting with a prayer, the MC turned the floor to the keynote speaker. It was Ismael, Brazil's spirit guide, who immediately stood up, deeply moving the assembly, even before uttering a single word. And then he transitions into, he just brings this line, I would say, that Ismael said, how Jesus, those who love you are here to serve you in any circumstance until the end of time. And he just brings this part of Ismael. And the rest is like up in the air for us to think, to connect with that, right? However, very consoling words by Bezerra de Menezes. The MC brings then and introduces Dr. Adolfo Bezerra de Menezes, who then comes and speaks to us about the work that they were doing, right? And this is one of the interesting parts that I'm going to try to bring, again, not all of it, but a good part of the work they are doing, and some of the things that he's mentioning as well. And he says the following: in this superior composition, we also hear the human voice distressed by the unbearable pain in the horrifying events raging on the earth. It comes from the human being floundering in their own mistakes, the abysses of their own making, their mad rebelliousness, and the unavoidable atonements that follow. Divine providence responds to the pleas of sufferers who feel the need for peace, and thus allows the rectifying pandemic to help them wake up to their reality as immortal beings, to reassess and examine themselves, returning to the paths of love that have been paved with hatred and pride, vices and gratification of the senses. I want to stop here because the idea that he tries to bring with his message, it's of how we deal with ourselves, how we're dealing with the environment at hand, our energies, and in connection with the universe. How we are, to a certain degree, in command, right, of ourselves. And I believe this is also the reason why Mr. Miranda at the beginning mentions about the cells that daily are dying within ourselves, and new cells are being created. And is anybody saying, okay, cell, reproduce right now? No, we're not. It's happening automatically, right? How amazing is life within ourselves, and we don't pay attention to it, right? One thing that I'm gonna just a little plug here, and thinking Paula, because every time I hear a person saying my head is killing, my back is killing, or this is killing me, right? And I look at it and I remember she gave me a little poster saying, what is it? My back gives me support. Because I used to say the same thing because of my back, right? And it's like, wait a minute, no, your back is not killing you. Your back is giving you support. Your head is not killing you. Your head is helping you think or can conduct yourself, right? Something is off for you to feel pain, right? But our body is not killing us. Something is happening. And that is an alert for us to, it's like the light on the car that comes up on the dashboard. Okay, do something. And if it starts flashing, guess what? You better stop, because something is about to happen. It's going to get worse, right? It's the same thing. That's pain in our lives. And here we see Dr. Bezerra is saying, yeah, the pandemic is to wake us up as well. Even though we're going to see a lot of exploiters, we're going to see a lot of issues coming up, but it helps us wake up. To the extent that culture had been rousing narcissists and exploiters, as I just said, an edifying movement was inevitable to counter debauchery and anarchy. The pretense was that life is the result of chance, of the unimaginable with no purpose, as if the Earth were a ghost ship that appeared in the sea of the cosmos only to be soon consumed into nothingness. To take advantage of this coarse pleasures would be the only way of living, of enjoying their chaotic existence, and this is referring to the other side that does not us to prevail in our endeavors. Everything that includes to love and renunciation from lower passions has been met with resistance, with the advices from moral health receiving mockery and the street as well. Countries technologically well equipped and morally lost in atheism, and their thirst for supremacy, gripped by their fleeting power, found in microbiology destructive viruses for a future biological warfare. If their alternatives of force and pressure would fail, they could make use of strains of influenza and other diseases, which has culminated in the creation of terrible killer that is defeating them too. So it's like, okay, I'm going to create or I'm going to develop this, to oppress others, but it turns back against us, right? And it happens. And what I would like to say, despite the fact that he's pointing something greater that we have to be aware of it, but how are we doing? What are we doing with our energies? Are we using to make ourselves better or to enhance our lives? Or as the gentleman that Dione brought to us, he was using his energy to criticize his life as well as the life of others. We do the same thing. So who are we to an extent? I say this to an extent because also we have to be aware to condemn this nation, that nation, and what they're doing when we ourselves are not doing what we're supposed to do. Let us always bring to our reality, right? Let us always bring as well to how we as a person are doing with our energies before we start thinking about the collective. It's very easy for me to say, oh, this person is doing this, the Spiritist Center is not doing that, right? At work, we have a group of people who is not doing this or that. What about me? Am I leading by example, right? So I think it's important for us to remind ourselves of this. All of those with an immune system susceptible to infection as a result of their moral conduct will experience the cycle of discarnating, preparing themselves to follow the progress of the planet as soon as they rectify their wrongs and find themselves in a condition to grow and attain wisdom. With the huge migration of benefactors of interplanetary humanity, which will assist the aspirants in the attainment of the everlasting light of redemption, spiritual renewal will take over all corners of the world like a rising spring, blessing the ashes, getting from the flowers in color, beauty and harmony for the new festive landscape. So we see the transition here. We see the change. We see the help. We see the connection, perhaps even for those who are susceptible to it, right? And it's not, to an extent that we can say that it is fatalism, but there is a renewal afterwards. The master will gather his disciples and enlighten them even further, so that any remaining shadow is dissolved by the incomparable clarities of the good and the union of souls at the great banquet of peace. In the meantime, suffering will still shatter many lives, which awaken in the throes of death for future experiences of fraternity in long chant of humility and appreciation for life in all its manifestation. To finalize, we will follow dreadful tragedies derived from the spirit obsession stubbornly ignored by reincarnated beings, and thus will seek to inspire them towards rectitude and the unceasing good, although unsure of its success, since it always belongs to the all-merciful Father. Our purpose, and we're going to talk about purpose again, will be to prevent direct and indirect suicides, to calm the anxieties, to encourage unrestricted trust in the Lord, to walk with the weak, trying to help them stay strong, trusting in the divine goodness, even under the storms of suffering and despair. It's one of their purpose, and we're going to once more talk about purpose later on. But we see that in this process, we're being helped, right? We're being guided. For those who discarnate, even those who were discarnate in desperation, connected with the brothers and sisters of the past, they are still not in a well established condition within themselves, right? So it's important for us to also look the fact that, yes, we're seeing this of something that has happened a year or 2 years ago, but imagine how many minds are still suffering with this, how many families are still suffering with this. Because when we talk about the spiritual connection, hopefully I don't think we're going to have time to say the last case of chapter 8, and if not, we invite everyone to read as usual we do. The connections that we have, most of the time, they are collective connections. What am I trying to say? That perhaps my as much as my mentor will try to guide not only me but those around me to change my ways if I need to, right? Because sometimes they can't get to us. What they would do: talk to my wife, talk to my kids, talk to somebody at the Spiritist Center, talk to somebody at work. Now, think on the flip side. If the obsessors cannot get to us directly, what will they do? They'll obsess those around me. They'll create chaos towards those around me. So that I all feel, that in that case, I will feel chaotic. And that it is when it comes this direct. We're not talking about direct suicide here, but we have the indirect suicide thoughts of drinking, overeating, or over living a lavish life, right? Or doing something that is spiritual, it's more mundane, right? So those are the things that we have to be aware of. And in order for us to get to this higher order or higher way of thinking, we have to get ourselves up there. We will not favor some in detriment of others, because they are all brothers and sisters deserving our tenderness and support. And we will see this exemplified in every single case that they attend to, that it is not only helping the obsessed, but also the obsessor, because without which the obsession will never cease. I'll say it again. Every single case, they're helping the obsessed and also the obsessor. And most of the time, the obsessors, there are many. As we have seen Jesus saying 2,000 years ago, right? There are many. They're not just one. And both sides are helped. Both sides are given the ability to rehabilitate themselves, right? Through suffering, earthly society will learn to correct its moral behavior and educate its thoughts, realizing that the mental realm is the seat of its thinking life, and thus the co-creative sector of life. We'll stop right here and just kind of recollect this idea of how we think, how we conduct ourselves, how we connect with one another, and most importantly, how we connect with ourselves, right? Any projection that we have towards ourselves can be very detrimental. We sometimes think, we're worried about what's happening on how people will see us. But first of all, let us analyze how we're seeing ourselves. If I were look in the mirror, and this is, please don't. If I look in the mirror and I perhaps don't like something, aesthetic, that do something to change. And if you don't like it, but you accept love yourself anyways, right? And we see a lot of issues arising from this idea of, oh, I don't like this, or I don't like that. Well, are you doing something to change? Right? The way I speak, or because I'm a little bit more taller than other people, because I'm a little bit more shorter than other people. No, this is serious. These are things that we have to, I know I'm saying this serious because Kirsten is laughing back there, but we have to love ourselves. We have to love the way we are. Sometimes we take a picture, it's like, oh, don't post that. Post it, it's us. How do you think people actually look at ourselves, right? And I'm saying this with love, people, because any negative thought that we have towards ourselves, it will only enhance the negativity that others have towards us. And I say again, there are many. It's something simple, and we can change it. Just that alone, to look in the mirror and say, I love myself. Yes, I said something wrong the other day to somebody else. I feel kind of, did you say I'm sorry for what you said, right? Go and correct. We're not perfect. Hopefully the other person will take your, excuses, whatever you have to say, I'm sorry, and the beauty of loving ourselves. And I say this because this is one of the things that came to mind, even though it's not explicitly said here, we have to love ourselves more. Moving to another aspect of this discussion by Bezerra de Menezes, he says, never disregard the excellence of prayer that strengthens the vital centers and invigorates the inhibiting energies, killing the virus. This transmission of spiritual fluids through passes is also of vital importance in any stage of the disease, especially when applied by moral sound individuals with healing capabilities. It is essential to bond at all times with Jesus, the divine physician of souls, and his messengers, devoted to the therapeutic charity of the front lines, protecting those in dangers of contamination. Just something that crossed my mind that also Manuel Philomeno de Miranda mentions is that a lot of the healthcare workers, they were also feeling stress, and they are still, right? And there are a lot of them, many of them, they will worry about themselves more than they worry about the patients. There's also, a balance that we have to do. I also work with the public. I never stopped working with the public throughout the pandemic. I had to worry about myself, right? And I was at some nights I went to sleep. I was like, oh my God, and it's that. But then you have to reconnect and said, I'm going to do my best. I'm going to take care of myself, and life will go on, right? But think about being in the front line just like these people. It was really hard, really, really hard. Just something that he mentions that I think it's important for us to bring as well. The divine support does not forsake them, and this is talking about the people who do not think of positive ways, do not change their ways, right? Because he said, even when their lack of religious faith does not help them with their own line of defense. This is important too. Even when their lack of religious faith does not help them with their own line of defense. So it's like, okay, in order for me to get help, I have to help myself. In order for me to change, or in order for me to receive Bezerra de Menezes or my mentor, I have to change. I have to utilize of the resources that I have to connect with them. The great battle is in its early stage, and talking about the virus, and we must all pray that the Lord grants us his mercy so that the period of contamination come to an end, with its possible disappearance or a change in the evolutionary landscape, exhorting the protection of the Lord, let us surrender to his will. And then he finalizes, obviously, and then others, as Manuel Philomeno de Miranda mentions, speakers come by and they also give their word, because there are many of them helping in this session, in this meeting, to prepare for the work that is being done. So we see again, once more, it's the help is there, but we have responsibility to connect with these higher minds, right? And if those of you were here, and if you want to go back to listen to Kirsten's talk last week, and when we ask at the end, this connection in terms of prayer, is that a training for mediumship? It is. And I say mediumship in terms of connect with higher mind, right? Because mediumship is being the medium between two individuals. I'm talking about the higher connection, right, to higher minds. It's not going to happen if we don't do our work. So it's important for us to ask, pray, ask, give thanks, do it again and again until we get there. So in the battlefield, they go and they go back to the work that they have to get to, attend those who are in need, and he also makes a connection with the actual location, the spirit realm, as well as in the physical realm that they are working right now. And when they're attending, folks, think of this home like any spirit center, any religious organization location. They have the physical location, but connected to it, there's a school, there's a hospital, there are other types of work being done in the spirit realm, and they're connected with us. Sometimes we think that, oh, I'm just somebody who's going to watch the talk. Well, guess what? Your mentor allowed you to connect with certain spirits, and we bring the spirits here. We are allowed to do so to help. And when they come here, what happens? They get to be attended. That's why sometimes we go to a location, and this is not in the book. We're just making a parallel here so for us to understand the magnitude of the work of these higher minds. That's why sometimes we feel that in this position of, I don't want to go to the spirit center, or we feel tired, right? Or the kids, they ask to do something, they don't want to come, or something happens. We have to do our work. That's why we'll also say that when we're praying, when we do our visualization at the Spiritist Center, that we can help because we're connected and we're worthy of this work as well. Not only to receive, but also to give. At the end of the magnificent meeting, we joined other deeply moved groups in a state of great anticipation to be able to serve during that extraordinary moment, characterized by the uncertainties the pandemic left behind everywhere after its passage. The measures and recommendations of healthcare agencies generated many conflicts, with government exerting different approaches regarding social distancing, vigorous quarantines, or a control lifting of these mandates to avoid other harms, chiefly those related to the economy. And we saw all of this happening. Why we're bringing this up again? So we can prepare ourselves that when we're watching the media, when we're listening to the different regulations, different things, we're able to analyze things with a broader mind. Because all that we did is like we're scared, right? It was that feeling of uncertainty that led us to, just be home, to be on the extremes. Either, oh, this is crazy, this is not happening, when we clearly saw other people dying, right? Or for those as well that just didn't want to stay home, didn't want to do anything, were afraid to do everything, and didn't live their lives, right? So it's for us to reanalyze that because we're on the planet Earth, it couldn't happen again. Because who would think that we would be going through what we went through in 2022? We're talking about what? War. Who would have thought? Can we change? No. Directly? No. But indirectly, we can. By changing the way we perceive things, by changing the way we analyze things, and we accept certain things as well. Companies lacking sufficient assets started to lay off employees, creating greater difficulties for families and their sustenance. Moreover, if the quarantine was stretched much longer and food production fell, a new problem would have to be faced. And this is, again, them looking, this is the beginning of the pandemic. This is them with their capabilities to foresee the future, saying, this can happen, folks. We need to do something. We need to intervene. We need to help. And we saw it happening, right? Prices the way they are now, things, and again, see, let us think of how these higher minds are actually thinking beforehand. So we go back to the purpose. Let's go back to the purpose. When they are doing this type of work, they have a purpose. And the reason we're emphasizing this idea of purpose is because we also would like to emphasize this in our lives. What is our purpose? What are we doing with our life? We should have a mission statement, right? We should have a vision, right? Think of a mission statement of what we're trying to achieve. And think of a vision, exactly what it says. A vision is something that we want to become in the future. And any of us can create this. In the business world, that's all you learn. Mission and vision statement. And how you support that mission and vision statement that you have. Not only for your customers, for yourself as an employee, but also your investors. I challenge each one of you guys to go back to wherever you work, even in the public sector. They have a mission statement. Try to find out. And I guarantee you that you will do a better job because then you connect with the mission statement. Any company, Coca-Cola has one. I should be saying names here, but they have a mission statement. And why do we don't have a purpose? And I talk about mission statement because we have to have a purpose, right? Some companies, they really put down your throat. This is what we're going to do. and they're relentless on it because they know that there is a competition, and if they don't do so, they lose customers, they lose money. Why we're not doing this in our lives? Why we don't have a purpose? Why we get up in the morning and say, I want to be all that I can be? No. It has to be something attainable, right? It has to be something. But, anyways, I digress. The purpose of our effort was to demonstrate that the love of God never ceases, but it is essential that those in need conduct themselves in a way to receive the benefit and submit to the existing conditions, always connecting with God. Unfortunately, however, in these terrible times, cruel exploiters take advantage of the moment to obtain illicit benefits. Political schemers, always disinterested in the people who elect them and who they now cruelly betray, meandered around in lawmaking bodies of governance, cogitating personal advantage, behaving turbulently, with death continue reaping the lives relegated to a secondary plane. We became quite concerned after listening to several groups from different areas of the country and returned to our headquarters to immerse ourselves in the action that could no longer be delayed. So this is conversation that they were having after the meeting there with other groups that were from Brazil, from other locations in Brazil, that were at the meeting as well. And he goes over different other things as well. So we see again collective work, right? The group work here that it was being done in the higher realms. And then he starts the new day by saying, the blessed day rose brightly, inviting us for victorious action of the good. Darkness never succeeds because a ray of light is enough to dilute it. Just like the examples of love triumph over the bastions of ignorance to implant the blessings of hope and peace. The dense dark gray psychosphere remained, confirmed the imbalance of human thoughts. With the understandable exceptions, conversations in general were uncouth, something that society had easily gotten used to, is sprinkled with crude expression of a vulgar modernism, typical of the individual's morals, while the number of vile, coarse, mocking, and vengeful spirit was expressive and quite worrying. As you can see, I'm reading this very slowly so we can pay attention. The vast majority of them had been released from regions of fear and brutal expiations, allowing these hordes, imprisoned before in punitive strongholds in the spirit world, to now live among the incarnate of roughly the same emotional nature, yielding to dangerous ties related to another type of epidemic, that of a moral character. So when we read this, it's like, wait a minute. If they're in prison, why were they let go? Or were they let go? Whoever was holding them said, okay, now you can go. Did it happen that way? Do you think that that's what happened? Do we think that, in fact, there is a prison, and I believe there are certain cases that we can believe that there's certain spirits that are held so they don't create much more harm until they're put to sleep, they're kindly given something that they kind of rest or whatnot. We see it happening in the unionistic meetings. But this happened, they were let go because our thoughts, the way we were thinking, the way we were vibrating, we attracted them. And it got to such a magnitude that they had to do what they had to do because we were attracting them. Not the government, who did not want to know what was happening to others, but us, ourselves, connecting with the negativity. That's why I said earlier, we, in a state of alert, not to say other things, we went to the extremes. It was either don't do anything, everybody's going to die, or, oh no, we still have to continue to live our lives. It's easy to do that, right? Hide, run, fight or run, one of the two, right? Or live our lives, whatever. Nobody's dying. That's just a lie, right? We have to be more assertive. And we can see here, they were very expressive. These spirits are very expressive. They do whatever they want and they say whatever they want if we don't put a stop to it. Human groups were invariably entangled in the mental and emotional webs of these discarnated spirits, who intensified their worries and petty quandaries. Certainly, other groups creating a healthy psychosphere were also noticeable, demonstrating that in the swamps of in the swamp, in the swamps, the lilies are more fragrant. That a large segment of society maintains ethical values and conduct compatible with their upright religious beliefs or edifying behavior philosophies. So there are groups of people who are thinking well, and we can include ourselves in it, despite our difficulties that we went through. Right? We get up in the morning, we send good messages to another. We do different things. We try to change our ways. Right? And then I'm going a little bit faster here because of time. I want to highlight on this, because this is important right here as well. And I may stop after this, even though we have more. He talks about education, and this is referring to how the location that they were worried about education, how that connects as well with the spirit world. Education. In our present community, we were able to perfectly distinguish the luminous aura of its dedicated workers, as well as a large number of its beneficiaries, who remain connected to beauty and the healthy aspects of existence. The children's education sector radiated the most beautiful vibrations, and even considering that almost all students and assistants recipients came from the very poor and violent surrounding neighborhoods, where the most cruel vices did not spare anyone. We noticed nonetheless noble spirits intent on becoming good citizens, inspiring teachers, even those with less interest in a work that unfortunately represented an unpleasant burden to them. Unfortunately, it is still not well understood that education is the soul of life, the most valuable tool for the success and progress of human beings and the world in general. I also noted that this is very alarming. I also noted the hatred of some spirits obsessors connected to children that seem to have a learning disability, autism, or an aggressive streak, as they were haunted by spirit enemies who tried to stop them from developing, making it difficult to keep them in the classroom. Education, folks. Education, education. And one of the things that we also that we noticed with the teachings and what we have seen is that it has taken its toll, right? With all of that has happened with pandemic, before the pandemic as well. And we go back to education in general, I say education in general, not only the didactic one that, math and the different things that we have to learn, but spiritual as well, right? We don't even have to get to the spiritual part. One of the cases, just to illustrate what I'm trying to say here, one of the cases that the hospital in the area that they're working, the physical realm, was created by a very devoted doctor. And they mentioned that he was not religious. But when he gets to the other side, he actually is invited to still maintain the work on the other side as being the guiding mentor of that hospital. So it's not just the religion or religiosity that we understand, that we know on planet Earth, right? But the act of creating something bigger than ourselves and helping others, that in itself is being religious, right? And he gets on the other side, he actually still conducts the hospital. And one of the things that they also mentioned, that he actually used to teach. So you see the education, the payback of education, right? To conduct something bigger than himself. And we look at kids nowadays struggling with school, and sometimes we don't understand the reason why, right? Or the lack of us pushing. Yes, pushing. No, you have to do it. It's part of life. We came here to learn. It goes back to the purpose, right? Telling the kids, why did you reincarnate? Oh, I didn't ask to be here. Well, are you sure? Are you sure? We have several books here saying, yes, you did. We did together. So it's our duty to impose on one another in a nice way because the benefits can be several later on. Let's not wait. Let us not wait. For me, it took a little bit late. It came late, but it's coming. Hopefully it's coming. And it's never too late for us to restart. I would like to, just to kind of finalize here, finalize with this case that it's really interesting to close up. And it kind of goes back to the case of how we're connecting with the spiritual world and with ourselves, right? Towards the end of the book, Manuel Philomeno de Miranda describes of a case of a family of four, two elderly parents and a 26-year-old young lady who was a nurse and a 16-year-old son and brother of her, working as a healthcare in the healthcare sector. What happens? She brings COVID home. The father gets infected, the brother gets infected. They both discarnate under very deplorable situations, not because of the physical body, but how connected they were and the lack of faith, the lack of religiosity that they had, and what happens to them in terms of this re-encounter with the spiritual world. They suffer a lot. And what happens to her? She gets into this guilty feeling that she then starts thinking about committing suicide. And then things get very bad then, because now she's not only the father and the mothers and the brother not only going through their issues, but now her, in terms of connection, but now she's connecting with very deplorable minds that wants her to commit suicide. It's very sad. And the reason I bring this towards the end is not for us to feel sad or whatnot, but for us to be alerted of the many cases that have happened and they're still happening, right, in terms of obsessions in these lives. For those who went to the other side and for those who are still here. Imagine for those families that has no religiosity or spirituality whatsoever, how they're thinking. Where's my father? Where's my mother? Where's my brother, son, whoever, right? And this is a case of a 16-year-old when we were told in many cases that, oh, no, they don't get infected. I even caught that as well. I don't know if you, for those of you who read it, I was thinking, oh, 16-year-old, wait a minute. Kids didn't, no, yes. We see a case here, not as many as we, so think about for a mother, because they don't mention that the mother discarnated, but think about for the mother as well, the difficulty of losing the husband and the son, right? So it's very difficult. And I would like to beg everyone that when we say our prayers, we start to connect with these things. Not in a morbid way, but to send them good vibrations, to send them some light that as the man that Dione brought to us earlier today, they can have that shift, right? Let us stop living our lives without a purpose and put this as a purpose, if anything, right? And change the way we're seeing these things. Because as we have mentioned before, the issues are yet to come. Think about the kids who went through the pandemic. And I worry about my kids as well. And they were not little kids, right? Because that's something that they're going to have in their lives for the rest of their lives. What about the 11-year-olds, right? What about the 10-year-olds? One thing that it caught my attention about, say, 6 months ago when we're still, mask mandates were still there, facial expression, smiling. Many of these kids, toddlers, they did not know what it was. Would that affect their lives later on? Right? Something that I was actually in my little world, playing with this little kid at work, one of my customers' kid, and I started thinking, she doesn't know that I'm smiling. She only see this ugly face with the beard. She cannot see my teeth, And I brushed my teeth today. So it was, I started thinking, they don't even have that face expression. Now they do, thank God, right? But that moment that is really important for the kid to understand expressions, they did not assimilate that at all. So that later on can affect their lives. Just something small for us to think that sometimes it goes unnoticed, right? And we just go with our days. So it's important for us to really think about these things and paying attention, because the suffering are many, but the help is there. How we connect is really how we should really. It's to me, it would be the only thing that I would like to ask. Bring these two chapters, and so that we can go home, not to feel sad, but quite the opposite. Take our energies and let us put in the right place, right? Take our energies and let us look at ourselves in a different way, so that we are paying attention to the people changing our diapers, as Dione said, right? Exactly. That physical jolt to for us to look at it and say, okay, let me at least ask, how are you today, right? So it's important that we do that, folks. I know there is much more, and I would like to bring more, but as we said, as always, that there's so much to do. There's so much to bring, so much to share, but the time is limited. The next time we connect, we will be covering complex activities in the great beyond. Love never stops, as we have seen here, but they go deeper into these aspects of life, right? And I say life here, both realms. And on that note, I'll open up for questions and comments that you may have. And here, where's the other one? I know the audience would like to ask questions.
Yeah, taking a ride on what Leo said about not on a morbid way, think about, but at the same time, think about how tuberculosis once was a horrible thing. Or in many other things, because there was no penicillin, there was no antibiotics, there was at least not enough. So I think don't feel discouraged. Keep on thinking, how am I going to get better? How I can help one another and myself, but in a very constructive way. Because if you put things in perspective, there are so many tools, and of course it is sad for those that lost people, friends, and family members. Of course, it is sad. But in other times of life, and the mankind also went through this, and it was the yellow fever, how do you say, variola? Remember the black? There was, it was not a black thing, the black pest. It was something like bexiga, like they say bexiga in Brazil. How many people got deformed, and so I think as time goes by, as you say, your daughter and my daughter, our kids in general, they're going to cope with this thing for the rest of their lives, but always think, what can I do? What is the lesson, and what can I do for myself and to help other people?
Thank you. And this is a great point that you bring, Dione, because one of the things that they mention as well is the other pandemics that we went through, right? And how resilient we are. Now, resilience has a price, right? If we think, oh, well, it takes a lot of energy for us to take a hit and stand up and get everybody around you up as well, because sometimes you have to be that leader, right? Or or sometimes we can't do it and we need that help, so somebody has to do it, right? Because you're more attuned, or they have greater energies, more powerful energies, but it does have a price, right? It's not something that it just happens like that. And by the time we realize that, well, we need to be resilient, we need to change, a lot has happened already, right? Sometimes we lose a lot of lives, so sometimes we lose a lot of energy, physical resources as well, right? Not even mention time. So what I'm trying to say is for us to pray and to be cooperate with one another, that we remember these things in a positive way. That when we look at what we went through right now, we don't waste time, right? And that the resilience will come. So this is a great example, because they do mention other issues that we had in the past and how we learned. Some of these individuals, Euripus Bassanufo, for example, they went through, some tough times, and they discarnated in difficult times as well, because of other pandemics. So thank you for the comment.
Any other questions or comments from our public here that are public? Paula.
I usually have one statement I'd like further clarification on. Is this working? Oh, close to me.
What is the page?
Let me see. Page 104. It's near the top. In fact, it's the first complete sentence after the first paragraph.
Okay. Go ahead.
Oh, the issue of personal immunology is programmed for each life, considering its past and its future program. Now, I get past, that we're bringing in experiences from before. I'm not quite so clear on future, considering we have free will.
You just answered.
Well, then that's not fixed. It was just a general future program.
Correct. We're making it right now. And I'm glad that you brought this because I didn't put the text there. And that's one of those paragraphs that were like, should we bring this? Should we bring it? Should we not bring this? Should we not? Because it is just that paragraph alone is it's 1 hour of talk or even more, right? We can do a seminar on it, right? This idea of the how we immunize ourselves, it's based on our past, right? Or what we have done. There are consequences on what we have done. And I'll say with all the love, all the consideration here, Jesus did not die on the cross to wash our sins. He did so that he can be a model for all of us. But whatever we did wrong in the past, we have, hopefully there will be no criticism on this, but again, we have to alert minds here. We are responsible for what we have done. And there will be consequences on how we used to vibrate, even though we have changed now, on how we used to vibrate, right, in this life. Now, I have a choice now, as Paula said. This is my present. How am I vibrating towards it, the past that we had? Because as we analyzed earlier today here, nobody raised our hands when we say, I don't have any enemies. I don't have any obsessors, right? We all know, based on how we vibrate now. There are moments of my life that I also become a little bit off, right? And my wife is back here. She can attest to that, right? And some of you as well who know me a little bit more than others, we're human beings. Now, what I do with the now is what is going to change the future. Now, as we have also received here, that doesn't mean that we're all going to burn, this is going to happen to us. We're going to be helped. We're going to be helped. And this is the beauty of it, the alert that Spiritism brings to us on this exchange of life, right? The physical, the spiritual, whether we're here or on the other side, we can change the future. So thank you for bringing that statement. I don't know if that helps. But yes, we are constructing this future.
You want me to do my other two questions and then give two? Okay. I really like this sentence. I'm just going to read it out loud.
Okay.
On 116, some turnstiles had been placed with the ability to measure the vibrational levels of the disincarnate trying to enter. I want one for my front door.
Yes, they I'm glad that you brought that as well, because they said that there were let's say attendees or helpers of the home that were helping in the Spiritist Center, so that only certain individuals were entering, right? And we're talking about in the spirit level, right? Because the hospital was attending people that came in deplorable state with COVID-19, or perhaps other things as well. 1 second.
Yeah, we're going to change the battery real quick.
Oh, okay, which in here. So let me mine.
Hi, you can hear me. All right. This is a curiosity. When you were finishing up talking about the children with the learning disabilities, autism, aggression, etc., having obsessors with them, that makes sense. From my understanding, Brazil has psychiatric spiritist hospitals. Does Divaldo at his center, or are there other places in Brazil that have educational Spiritist centers where they're treating these children with these issues and incorporating all the spiritual know-how?
Paula, I would like to say yes. I've never been there. I do not know the extent of their work with these children. Knowing the extent of his work in general, knowing this two side of life, I'm quite sure that the work is very inclusive to make sure that these individuals they are attended as well. We know of cases where that I have heard of cases of individuals who have some lack of understanding, to say the least. They're now adults, and they're still working with them. They're given the opportunity to work. They're given the opportunity to be productive as well in their own ways, right? So that's the only thing I can say that I know personally. But based on what they do, I am quite sure that they're aware of it. So much so that this was mentioned in the book too. So again, thank you for that comment, Kirsten.
Yes, thank you everyone for your comments. And we have a couple of questions online. Because of time, we're just going to get to one. So it comes from Yasko.
Oh, Yasko.
Yes. So she says, one comment she just made. In Mansão do Caminho, Dr. Juan Danilo from Ecuador, expert with autism. Okay, yeah. Her question about the obsession over children with mental disability. We know they are not infants, but old adult spirits.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering what would occur during their sleep and emancipation and encountering with their obsessors, old enemies of the past. Prayer and disobsession sessions in spiritist centers might ease their conditions, right?
Yes, no doubt about it. This connection with spirituality, understanding, even though they are now in a position that they cannot comprehend fully what's happening, it eases, right? It helps them to transition into a different state. And as we do so, folks, we go back to what we read. What happens when we pray? Do we think that we are only praying for ourselves? The obsessors are also being attended, right? The obsessors of the past, they're being attended as well. The work happens on both sides. Otherwise, the condition will not change. Because it's very easy for us to look at ourselves and say, oh my gosh, I'm suffering. Well, you're suffering. We are suffering, but the past, it was the opposite. We're the one imposing, doing wrong things, right? And now we have a better understanding, say, no more. And I am certain, Yasko, that for sure that prayer, the passes, spirituality in general, right, is important for us. That's why education, and no wonder they put this issue there of obsession on kids. It's great. I have an uncle, and it's for some of you already know this. I have mentioned this as well. He had a mechanic shop right next to his house. And when we went to he had a mechanic shop, and one thing that I like to highlight as well, that he had a huge pool in his house. So we wanted to go to his house because of the pool, summertime, Rio summertime the whole year. But anyways, during our vacation or school, recession, we would go to his house. Guess what? During the day, there was no pool. Let's go to work. We had to work. Right? Because he always said, if and some of us don't like the idea, how do you say it again? The mind, empty mind, office of the devil. Yes, say it out loud for us, please.
Idle hands are the devil's playground.
Thank you. And that was his thing. That was his way to educate us. Could he explain to us school topics? No, he's still very brute. I mean, if you know him, and the guy is just amazing. But that was his idea of education. And guess what? I love him because now I can work on my car. And my brother became a mechanic as well, right? but that was way of education. We think education just, sitting in class and doing things. No, it's to be useful, right? It's to learn a new skill. All of these things keep our minds from doing crazy things. So hopefully that helps.
Yes. And
Do
so
we have someone else, or I think?
Yep.
Or time.
Yeah,
Daniel, how
because
we
of
doing
time.
with time?
Yeah, I think because of time,
Okay.
we'll stop here.
All right.
Do you want to lead us out?
Just we can. I
Final
can.
comments?
Yes. I would like to just to say, folks, read the chapters. There's a lot to learn. There is a couple other passages there that I'm still like, oh, I don't have time, but it's okay. We'll cover some other time. And that it's important for all of us, in at least it enhanced my life, and hopefully we enhance more to all of you guys as well, because this work and the work of these mentors, it's just in the beyond, it's quite incomprehensible. And sometimes I'll open up with you guys. It's like, wow, how can I not see this, right? How can we not be open for this and be ever more connected to it? But that goes to show how small I am. I'm not going to say we are. It's not a doubt, but it's to really look at and say, we need to do more. I need to do more. So thank you for listening. Thank you for this moment that we spent together. We would like then to turn to a small visualization so we can also offer the passes. Remember, as it was mentioned here, the pass is a moment for us to connect with ourselves, connect with the higher minds, and guide one another